And thank you for joining another edition of Hoops Hitting Gems podcast. I'm your host, David Jones. Episode number 2 in season 4, number 94 overall as we get closer to episode number 100. Tonight's no different. We have another great guest online. For you serious college hoopers, you'll be very familiar with this name and face, especially the Alabama faithful. So my family that is watching in Alabama, I'm sure you will be excited to have this guest on to watch. But this is for everybody outside of the southern region as well that is not familiar with this school. Tonight it's no different. We have Coach Andrew Steele from Tennessee Tech, who's the assistant coach. How you doing today, Coach?
I'm good. Appreciate you having me on.
Oh, man, I appreciate you coming on, man, on a Sunday. With you being at Tennessee Tech, I wanted to introduce everybody to Tennessee Tech. But for the faithful listeners that are true basketball heads, they'll remember Coach Steele from his time at the University of Alabama in his playing days. But I wanted to bring him on because a lot of people that are outside of our region don't know much about Tennessee Tech and the OVC. So we're going to talk about Tennessee Tech and the OVC, and we're going to jump right into it, man. Man, it's almost that time, man. The season's here. And, we were talking backstage before we went live. You had a scrimmage and you got one more exhibition coming up before you got a big schedule in front of you. Let's talk about that. Who you got coming up?
Before we get started, I think it's appropriate, especially you being in Atlanta. I definitely want to pay respects to Coach Amir Abdur-Rahim and everybody affected by that. I'm really, really close with two of his guys on staff in South Florida. I've had the very fortunate experience of running into him, and all the stories that you hear are true. I can only imagine the people who spend an extended amount of time, they've got the same thing. And so I just know the impact in the short time. I knew of the few interactions. I mean, like I said, we all lost what we want this game to be about. And so I just felt it was appropriate, to pay my respects to him, to everybody else who's dealing with it, knowing that we're all dealing with it together. But he set a great example. So if I'm lucky, I'll be really, really lucky if my career can mirror his in any way, shape, or fashion. So I just wanted to start off with that.
Listen, I think it's appropriate you did that. I was going to save my respects for the end, but he's touched all of us here in Atlanta, and including myself. Amir was a big part of this where I'm at right now, and it's hurt everybody. And for anybody that doesn't know Amir, I mean, great dude. I was down there when he clinched the regular season championship against Wichita State. And,
awesome.
After the game, he took us around the facility and, he thanked us for coming and, he wanted to take pictures. If anybody that knows him, all you have to do is go to any of the social media platforms and look at the respect nationwide. And I think you nailed it right on the head. I look at this from a perspective of, you said something really good in regards to this. If any person can live the life he lived and gain the respect that he did amongst the college basketball community, you did an excellent job. And, he was just one of those guys. I tweeted out, when he passed, you couldn't help but root for him. You couldn't help it. I mean, He was that type of guy. It was that type of infectious personality and charisma that he had that, it touched everybody. And, definitely, like you said, prayers go out to his wife and kids, the whole South Florida and Kennesaw State community, because they're
yes.
too. So, yeah, I think that was appropriate for what you did, man. I mean, great individual, great person. Just he's going to be missed. Definitely going
for
to do
sure.
that.
For sure.
You know, and as we move from that, man, man, that album just has me sad, you know, because
yes,
the person he was.
Yes.
You know, Tennessee Tech, man, you know, tell us about Tennessee Tech for the people that aren't familiar with Tennessee Tech. You know, with it being in the OVC, one of the premier mid-major conferences in the country that people don't know much about. Go ahead and introduce them for the people that don't know.
It is. No, Tennessee Tech, we are in the OVC where we're really fortunate, you know, a very storied conference, especially when it comes to basketball. That tradition speaks for itself, you know, and so you still definitely see a lot of that pride that people take in the league, even as we've kind of transitioned into an era with newer schools. But for us at Tennessee Tech, we're located in Cookeville, Tennessee. It's basically the geographic center of the state. You know, an hour away from Nashville, about an hour and a half away from Chattanooga and Knoxville. Our school's about 11,000, which I'm going into my fourth year here. And every year we've set the record for enrollment with freshmen. So,
wow,
going on 4 straight years of having the biggest freshman class enroll. And that's a credit to our president, who's been very, very aggressive in trying to drive enrollment. Obviously athletics is a big part of that because that's a big window into the school. So very big on engineering at Tennessee Tech. If you graduate with an engineering degree, you're on the same level in terms of like a Georgia Tech, a Virginia Tech. You're in the category with their schools. Every rating that rates the return on investment, the value of the education, most cost effective, gets you more prepared for a job coming out, and the highest average earning salary when you graduate from Tennessee Tech. That's at any degree. So especially for those who get more geared towards, science, math, technology, engineering, you got a really good, strong chance of graduating from our school having an advantage. Our president, he's been here 12 years. He's over $400 million worth of new buildings. We just opened a $30 million engineering building 2 weeks ago. 2 years before that, we opened up a $15 million engineering building. Right around the time when COVID hit, we opened up a state-of-the-art recreation center. And we're in the process now of pretty much creating a brand new football stadium where at the end of this year, they'll have one half completed. They'll do work on the other half. So by the start of the 2026 season, we'll have a brand new multi-million-dollar football stadium and operations center. We're really, really fortunate. The arena we play in, the Hooper Evelyn Center, seats about 10,000. It's obviously used for men's and women's games, but graduations, other local events, a lot of concerts. So we're very, very fortunate for what we have. I mean, any school, I think, tries to continuously improve every area where they can. But in terms of what we need to operate on a daily basis at a high level, we're super fortunate. We've got everything we need. So we're super excited, direction the school's going. And, hopefully our basketball program can play a big part in that as well.
And like you said, this is year 4. And, with this being year 4, tell us how you guys did last year and the expectation for this upcoming season.
Well, last year we struggled. We had 5 guys that went out with season-ending injuries before Christmas.
Wow.
And not to make that as an excuse, but as well as I do, you don't have any depth. That's tough. Mm-hmm. And with that, we played in 11 one-possession games. The year before, we finished second in the league and lost in the conference championship game on a ridiculous buzzer beater. The game took about 5 years off my life. So we went from being down 7 in the last minute, took a lead with 10 seconds left. They missed a shot, thought we got the rebound, fouled the guy on the three-point shot. Then we throw it length of the court, and it's ruled a 3 in real time, but they go back and review, and the guy's foot was on the line by about this much. So we ended up losing in overtime, and that game was special too because our women's team had just won the championship a couple hours before, and they had lost in the championship game the year before. So that team too, we were one of the 30 best teams in the country in terms of shooting threes. We had 2 guys that left to go on and play professionally after that season. So that's kind of more the standard we need to get back to. And we feel like with this roster this year, they'll be really, really similar to that team. So our biggest thing is just making sure, we got to stay healthy. But if we can stay healthy, we feel like by the time we get in the league play where we need to gel, we'll be able to compete.
Okay. And I want to touch academics before we go further athletically. You said Tennessee Tech is right up there with Virginia Tech and Georgia Tech. So that means you can't walk in there with a 2.4 or 2.3, correct?
Yes. No, it's you have to have really good grades. Our school is really competitive from an academic standpoint, but us as coaches, the way we recruit, especially myself in particular, I was raised by two teachers. So I've always understood that academics comes first. Some people who obviously may remember me playing, my older brother played right before me. He's now the principal and the coach at the high school we went to. And I spent 2 years there as a head coach. So academics is super important, not only from our school standpoint, but from the expectations we set on our guys as a staff, because basketball is a really, really small window. I was 22 years old when I played my last game. If you would have told 15, 16-year-old version of me, I'm like, I'll still be playing right now. Well, now I'm 12 years removed from that. And if all I had was basketball, don't know where I would be. So the most important thing we can do is help these kids graduate. But we have a thing we like to say, and this for all sports at Tennessee Tech. We want you to walk away with a championship ring on one hand and a degree in the other. And both of those are equally important. But if we had to pick one, we want to pick the degree, because once you have that, nobody can take that away from you the rest of your life. And that sets you up to really go out and do whatever you want. So our standards aren't ridiculously high from a school standpoint, but we definitely, one of the first filters we have as a staff is making sure we recruit good students.
Okay. And like you said, the engineering degrees are big. What do the players tend to major in while they're there? And we'll just right now, like the guys that are on the roster right now, what are the big majors for them?
What we've typically seen mostly is business. And that's such a broad area. You can kind of expand wherever you want to go with it. But a lot of them typically come in with business degrees. The other one would be sport management, just obviously the athletic background. And, that can also take you in a bunch of different areas. So I would say business degrees and sports management are the two we see the most of.
Okay. Does Tennessee Tech have a grad program?
Yes. You can get pretty much any kind of grad degree you want. MBA program is really strong. We have a sports management program as well. So, we've got a bunch of different grad tracks that you can go with.
And I always ask that, which usually leads into this question as well. If I'm, I'm certain you guys take grad transfers, but when my career is over, can I come to you and say, hey, Coach Steele, I'd like to be a grad assistant? Is that a possibility?
Yes. We've got one guy right now who's finishing up his last year as a grad assistant with us. He came from the University of Kentucky. But we've had former players in the past stay along that track, especially if they want to get into coaching. That's how, I got my start. I got my master's from the University of South Alabama. So for guys who do want to get into coaching, that's an easy way to get into it. Or if it's, hey, it's a way for me to get my grad school paid for, but, I want to do it at a place I'm familiar and, kind of be around a program I care about. So there's a lot of different ways you can go with it, but that option is definitely available to any of our former student athletes that we have.
Okay. And, as we're getting into this, recruiting is a big thing now. A lot of people like to go older, where they go transfer portal or they go JUCO. But for these high school kids, when you go out in the summer and you're on the circuit, whether it be independent, whether it be SHU or what have you, what do you look for when you're looking for, of course you have different needs each year and it depends on the fit, whether it's position, but what are characteristics that you look for to say that's a Tennessee Tech guy right there?
Obviously, the talent has to be obvious, right?
Yes.
So beyond that, really the first is, what kind of teammate are you? Are you encouraging guys? Are you trying to be positive? Are you trying to step up and be a leader? Do you have bad body language? Are you coachable? How well do you compete? Because it's a long season in college basketball, and there's a lot of times we spend more time with the players than we do our own families.
Mm-hmm.
So, we have a belief that good people handle hard situations really well. So that's really the first trait we look for. And that's more obvious than I think, some people may not think, because in my experiences, and I've been around basketball my whole life, but there's the rare exception where you meet, a bad teammate, but a really good, trustworthy, dependable, coachable, selfless, caring person, right? Like a lot of those traits that you can see about a person come out in the game of basketball. And a lot of it's really evident early because, body language, nonverbal communication is the most, that's the most communication that you can get. So again, just simple things like, coaches listen, do they look them in the eyes? Are they receptive? Are they happy for teammate success? When they make a mistake, what kind of, are they encouraging them? What kind of words they say? So the biggest thing is, like I said, we want to find good people, guys who are competitive, because it's hard to win. It's hard to win no matter what you do. And so people who don't like winning or who aren't used to winning, they don't mesh well with us, because high achievers don't like people who don't achieve at a high level, and that flips vice versa. So if you bring in people who are okay with losing, then that doesn't work well with our culture. It doesn't mean you win every game, but it's a certain type of approach that you take. And I know in this day and age where a lot of people recruit, in the transfer portal, we still, where we can, try to take a more traditional approach. Not necessarily, and we'll get talent wherever, but we're big on relationships. And in some situations, it's hard to build a relationship in the portal. There can be situations where it works. One of our best players, was a kid we got out of the portal, but I coached with his uncle previously, so we had relationships there. Mm-hmm. So, like I said, it all for us boils down to, first and foremost, are you a good person? If so, we feel like everything else will kind of flow together with that. But if you got a reputation for, not being of high character, or is this something that we can pick up on really easy, there's a lot of people that get cut out. We're not saying our way is necessarily the best way, but we know what works for us.
I like your approach right there with that, because that's just being honest when you come with that. And people need to understand, you need to be not only a good player, as you said, but you need to be a fit for that culture. And if you're not a fit for that culture, it's not going to work amongst the teammates, because those guys that have gelled together for X amount of years, whether it's 1 year, 2 years, 3, 4, or 5 years, there's a certain culture that's expected. And when it becomes, quote unquote, that me, just me, that's a team killer, as we say. It's a culture killer. When you hear those words, culture killer or cancer on the team, you don't want to hear that behind your name, because
exactly
your days are limited probably at the end of that season, unfortunately. And I think that's so important, because you said obviously talent is definitely, you have to be able to see the talent, but you look for those intangibles that you've already said. What type of person is he? Does he take care of business off the court? Is he a good person, just period? All of that. People have no idea how important that stuff is, and how much you guys look for that. Everybody, can he put up 30? Can he put up 25? Is he that type of guy? That's great. But let's be honest, you guys have probably passed on some kids that were talented enough to play at Tech, but for various reasons, whether it's they don't take care of business in the classroom, or it's a me first attitude, or their body language is just a no, they're not supportive of teammates, or they're at the end of the bench sulking if stuff isn't going their way. People don't understand how important that is, and how fast you guys check that name right off on your list. That even if you guys came to see him, unfortunately, you may get up and leave at halftime and be like, let me go look at the next guy, because this is not a fit for us, because unfortunately he's turned you guys off, and
yep.
I always want to hammer on that for the people that watch this show, how important that is. And, can't stress in regards academics. Like, you know, you came from an academic family, so that's a blessing. So, you know, it was ingrained in you how important academics are. And what you said was spot on. This time, don't get me wrong, is the time in your life for you young guys from 17 to 21, 22, like you said, but it goes by really fast. And, you know, when I interview a lot of these guys, I like to ask one question at the end of an interview. And I always say, what are your plans when this is over? And they're looking at me like, I'm just getting started.
Yeah.
Like, no, this is about to be over for you. And they're like, oh, well, no, I'm gonna go overseas. And you know, I wait till after the interview a lot of times, and I'll say, you understand your chances of going professional are lower than what it was in going to college, and those numbers are low.
Yes. Yes.
But they don't think of it like that. They just say, oh, well, that's not going to happen to me. And I'm like, man, you better have a backup plan. I'm not saying don't follow your dream, but when this is over, like you said, before 25, you're going to be looking around like, well, I should have done X, Y, and Z. And, you know, that's why I use this platform to continuously hammer that home. And, you know, how important that is to use this sport as a vessel to get that degree, like you said, because man, that's what this is supposed to be about. But everybody has the dream of, I'm going to be that one, whether it's Tennessee Tech or whatever school it is, to make it. And if you do, I mean, God bless you. And even what they don't understand, if you do make it, your professional career on average is 3 to 4 years.
Yep.
3 to 4 years. Yes. Then what?
Exactly.
You know, and that's without injuries or any of that. You know, the way the business is set up, you know, it's okay, your time is here. All of them think, oh, I'm going to make it 10 years and I'm going to get my pension and I'll be taken care of the rest of my life. That number is minuscule, very minuscule.
Yep. And no, you're 100% right.
And I just look at this, you know, I always challenge schools, but I didn't even have to say anything because, you know, your approach was great. You know, yes, you want to win a championship and have a ring on your finger, but have that degree in the other hand. That's that's the pitch right there. That's the way it's supposed to be. If you walked into my living room like that, that's what I want to hear. You know, every pitch, oh, we're going, you know, we're working to be the best team. We're trying to win a conference championship. Yes, I get all of that. But as a parent, if you didn't come to me like that, I'm like, how in tune are they with my kid graduating? And some of them will say, well, that's really on the kid. No, it's on the staff too. Mm-hmm. You know, whether they have it set up with their academic counselors or however they have it set up, it's as the staff as a whole to make sure that guy gets over the finish line. But we're not going to harp on that, man. The roster for this year, man. Tell us about the roster you have for this year.
Really excited about the group of guys we got in. We've got 4 guys that we came in from the JUCO ranks. So this will kind of be their first time at this level. And then we got 3 guys that already have some previous Division I or Division II experience. And then we got a couple young freshman guys as well, a couple local kids. So we've got a pretty good mix in terms of, I mean, we lost 3 leading scorers from last year. 2 graduated, 1 transferred to another school. Really 4 actual leading scorers, 2 graduated, 2 transferred, which that's the nature of a roster this year. You know, it's always funny when I'm out recruiting, I'm talking to people and they say, well, you know, how many spots do you have? What do you need? And I always say, ask me tomorrow. You know, ask me when I get back to campus because you just never know. Yeah. And as a former player, listen, I'm all for it, right? There's no other business model that says you can't go make the best decisions for you and your family. Yeah. I think where you run the issues is just the advice that leads to some of these actions. I don't think some of the best motives are always there. So that's where having a really, really strong support system comes in. But again, that's the reality of what we deal with. Obviously, you know, I played at Alabama. I'm an Alabama football fan. Nick Saban was the best at whatever was thrown at him, he adapted and figured it out. So This is no different. This is no different. And so roster turnover is one of those things you deal with, but the same approach we would take with the more traditional recruiting situation, we do in the portal as well. We try to identify and find out, what kind of people are they, what kind of characteristics and traits they have that will mesh well with us. So we feel like we've addressed all of that. But one of the things that we took a big step for, we think this year is shooting. Like I said, 2 years ago, we were one of the best. We were one of the 30 best teams in the country shooting threes. Just this last exhibition game, we made 12, and we went 12 or 32 from three and missed a bunch of wide open looks. So obviously, we feel like something that we should be able to rely upon is our ability to shoot the ball. So now it's just a matter of, I think we've got more athleticism to match the shooting as well. So, we try to recruit a bunch of guys that can all pass, dribble, and shoot. So there's no limitations. We've got one kid who's a little different. He's 7'3", 330 pounds, which with that kind of size, then that you can be a little different. You don't have necessarily pass, dribble, and shoot as well. You create an advantage all of yourself. But everybody else can definitely do those three things. So we really like our roster. Like I said, I think our biggest thing is just making sure those guys can stay healthy for a whole season. But so far through one game, we like what we've seen.
7'3", 330.
Still, it's unreal. We see him every day, but you never get quite used to it. You never get quite used to it. So
that's massive. That is massive. Goodness.
Yes.
And and correct me if I'm wrong, you said you have about 7 or 8 newcomers coming in?
7 newcomers this year. Yep. So a little bit about half and half of the roster. So my first off season here, we had to replace 10.
Wow.
So due to graduation and transfers out, so that was kind of right when the rule first became a thing. So it was like the shiny new toy everybody wanted to try out. And so, but again, even with that, right, we replaced 10. We finished second in our league, losing the championship game. Last year's team, I don't think we ever really got a full look of what they looked like. So I think we've shown an ability to, hopefully kind of get it right, even if you got to bring in a lot of people. But, with any good team, any good season, you got to have a bit of luck, from injuries to certain games. So there's just a lot that goes into it's more than just putting together a good roster. So we feel like from a talent standpoint, we have what we need. We just got to be really good at controlling what we can. And hopefully if we do that really well, it'll help us manage some of the stuff that you can't control.
So typical day, do you guys like to practice in the morning, afternoon? Do you do both? How's a typical day work at Tennessee Tech for the team?
Mostly in the afternoons now. We're trying for next semester to get morning practices. Coach Pelfrey's been doing this longer than I've been alive. So, he's kind of set in his ways. But, I worked for Nate Oates for his first year at Alabama, and that was the first time I ever really saw morning practice. So I see benefits to both. But for now, we typically go about anywhere between 2:30 and 3:30 in the afternoon. Our guys' schedules are pretty flexible, so a lot of them will come in at different points throughout the day, come in, get shots up, extra work. We really, really harp on them to try to come spend time with us watching film just because in the heat of the battle, there's certain things you see, and then you take a step back and then you look at it from a whole, you see it in a whole different perspective, and then it helps you look at the game a different way. So we really, really hammer our guys about stopping in as much as they can to come in and watch film with us. But typically by about 2 o'clock or so, most of their classes are done, and then we kind of shift into the phase where we're getting ready for practice. So got a couple guys who have 8 a.m. classes. Most of them start somewhere kind of between 9 and 10. So the days don't start, ridiculously early in terms of what we mandate. But you and I both know, the great ones find time to get in the extra work. So they're up early, they work late, they're really smart about it. And so we feel pretty good that we got, guys that are pretty self-driven, that we don't have to just always look after. And me personally, those are the kind of guys I try to recruit because, A, I'm not going to make my job harder by having to go back and babysit you. But number 2, I'm not going to be in your life forever. So if I'm always there to push you, I'm only handicapping you. So, again, like you said, there's so many guys that whether they realize it or not, they automatically exclude themselves from the kind of guys we try to bring in. And you never get them all right. Nobody bats 100%. But we try to be really, really diligent and intentional on the kind of guys we're bringing in.
And you know, I want to touch on that a little more. So do you have like a mandatory study hall for your guys, or is it like only freshmen only, or is it if you fall below a certain GPA? How does it work for you guys?
All of that's encompassed. The only way you get out of study hall is if you have a 4.0 GPA. We've had a couple guys get close. We've had a couple guys 3.8, 3.9, but if you get a 4.0 GPA in any semester, then we'll let you go. But yeah, everybody has a required amount of time of study hall. That's a sliding scale based on, you know, the academic experience, what your GPA is overall that semester. You know, we had a situation where we had one kid who had graduated the year before, still had eligibility because of all the stuff with COVID. So he had already gotten his degree. So his academic workload looked a little bit different, right? We treat everybody fairly, not equal. But yeah, it's based on your performance. So the better you perform, you have less responsibilities. Because again, we try to give these guys a lot of freedom. Again, equipping them for when we're going to leave here. So one thing we always really try to teach: your actions have consequences. You got the freedom of choice, but you don't have freedom of consequences. So you're a really good student, you get a little more freedom, a little more leeway. You're a bad student, you know, we have to be strict. And we've had situations where we've had to remove guys from games because of academic stuff. And again, just trying to get them to understand the consequences of actions, but especially in a team sport where what you do affects everybody else. And that's the same, you know, you run a business, a family, whatever it is you're doing, you're very rarely just going to have your actions isolated to a bubble of just you. So we try to find a bunch of different ways to drive that message home.
I like that. That's a great way to look at it. Like, yes, you guys are turning in, you know, you're producing, you know, teenagers that are turning into adults. So, you know, that accountability that you're speaking of, like, listen, and, you know, you saying right there at the end that, hey, if you're not taking care of this, we will sit you out. Like, that right there speaks volumes, because, you know, you don't hear that all the time. You know, they may say we may make you run, or, you know, something like that.
Oh, that's included. Run is definitely included too. But
and rightfully so, because, you know, that running will wake everybody up when you got to run, especially if it's 6 or 7 a.m. Oh, you want to do this work? Okay, I'll see you at 6:30. I'll see you at 5:30, something like that. But no, I mean, like you said, that right there teaches that accountability for when this is over, you know, and they'll remember that, like, oh man, I didn't do some work one time. I thought I could skate by, and, you know, Coach Steele came and called me out and said, hey, you're not dressing tonight. And then, you know, that's the wake up call. A lot of times, I'm not dressing. What do you mean I'm not dressing?
Exactly.
The academic advisor came and said you're missing 8 assignments or 6 assignments or 5, whatever the case may be, and your grades are not up to par. You are borderline ineligible for next semester. So, like you said, when you have to take those drastic steps, and like you said, it's not an everyday situation. You know, that's from time to time it does happen, but like you said, you do let them know, like, hey, if you push us there, we will take those extreme measures. You know, and it needs to happen. Man, you know, for people that don't know about the OVC and how incredibly, you know, competitive the OVC is, you know, you have your Murray States, and you know everybody knows about Ja Morant going to Murray State, but there's so many other good teams there. You know, when I think of the OVC, I think of the MAC, I think of the Sun Belt, I think of those conferences that are really good, that people, they may have heard the name, but they actually don't really know unless they're in those regions. You know, and you know, me coming, I'm a MAC guy. I went to Toledo, so, you know, I'm very familiar. But, you know, I'm from Pittsburgh, so I knew the Big East at that time. So the ACC, you know, with Penn State being in the Big Ten, of course I knew. And, you know, like I told you, with my family being from Alabama, they're huge Alabama fans. Unfortunately, we do have a couple that have lost their way that are Auburn fans. We'll let that slide.
You can't save everybody, right?
And you can't save everybody. They come in there with that blue and orange. I'm like, where did we go wrong? I don't understand. I don't understand. But you just say, God's still working with you. You're working in progress. You're working in progress. But no, man. I mean, with you being at a mid-major, and I talk this all the time, with low majors, mid-majors, and in a number of D2s, because I broadcast, for one of the schools in the Peach Belt Conference. And I tell people all the time, like, hey, man, listen, some of these schools that are D2 that are just as good as some of these low D1s, because, when we start talking about level, and that's what I love about college basketball. Like right now, it's November. You'll see some of these D2s really compete with some of these lower D1s because the parity is just starting to get so much closer now. And everybody has this idea, if I'm not high major, I can't make it. And man, you can speak to this as well. I tell people, all of y'all not going D1. All of y'all not going D2. And, to be honest with you, I'm like, you can get that good quality education there's some great D3 academic schools. There's some good NAIA schools as well. And I always speak on that because, I'm sure you get the calls and emails or texts and DMs. Oh, my baby's the best thing since sliced bread. And you take a look and you're like, they're not our level. And of course, it's not that you're, saying they can't play, but they're just not a fit per se for Tennessee Tech. And like you said, that's not the end of the world. They may be a fit at another Division I, at a Division II, Division III, whatever. Or they may need some development at a JUCO or post-grad. All these kids, I like to say this a lot, that light bulb doesn't go off for everybody at 17. It doesn't go off for everybody at 18. Sometimes it takes them being 19 or 20 when their body starts to mature or their fundamentals get a lot better. And like you said, the way this game is now, you guys are picking those guys up that are, transfer portals. Sometimes they're transferring up. Sometimes they're transferring down as well. And it's just one of those things where you got to find the fit to where you can develop. And that's what I wanted to touch on next. How big are you guys on player development?
It's really kind of what drives everything, right? Because there's no finished product. I mean, LeBron, maybe. How many of them are there, right? So, there's been one really in the history of the game. So, when you go to the level of those guys, they don't come around too often. So, it's probably not what you're dealing with. And I think I'm fortunate with the experience I have being a high school coach for 2 years where I get it. I got a three and a half year old now. So I understand as a parent where you think, you have this opinion about your child. I understand it. Sometimes it's a little closer to reality than others, but it's understandable. So, as a high school coach, I would always tell these guys, the reality is that if you just go by the numbers suggest none of you will go play at the next level. Like if you just do the averages, that's what the numbers suggest. So let's just say you're the exception to the rule. All right. So every level you go up, those numbers shrink even more. So you're starting with a really, really low number, and then you're trying to work your way up to each level. That number is going to shrink even further. So the goal should be, if somebody's going to give me free school, no matter what level, you better take it.
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough that I had a lot of offers, in football and basketball. But, my parents basically told me, hey, we're paying for everything but the college. You better figure it out on your own. So fortunately, we were able to get, me and my brother both, academic and athletic scholarships. But it's really, really competitive. And so what I see a lot from high school kids, their family, whoever it is, hey, just because I'm a really good high school player, that doesn't mean I'm good enough to go play beyond here, really on any level. And so I think what some people don't understand is that, at the end of the day, we have a job to do. This school pays me to go try to find the best representatives of our university on and off the court. Mm-hmm. So it's not a popularity contest. It's not personal, but so what I have to do is I've got to go back and justify, to our staff, to our head coach, to our administration, hey, here's why this person is the best fit for us to spend our resources on them. Well, you start talking about what does that profile look like? Well, you're not a really good player. That obviously cancels you out. Yeah. Okay, why are you a good player? But do you have a bad reputation? Do you have, bad character traits? Have I seen them? Are they heard about, right? So, like, it has to make sense on both sides, just like we always invite whoever we're recruiting, look at us the same way, because you as a family, whoever, y'all are trusting this person with us. So you should have that same type of filtering process like we have too, to make sure there's a really good fit, because this is their career. They get one chance to do this, and they owe it to themselves to do whatever they feel is in their best interest, the same way as us. So, I really believe in, my philosophy. I got a lot to get you here. I got a lot to keep you here. And so the lies are hard to remember, right? I may remember I told this lie one day, I told this lie the other day. The truth stays the same. And I look at it from a perspective too, as, I was a former student athlete that got recruited as well. So I see both sides of it. And, sometimes maybe I'm too honest to a fault, but, I look every parent, every family in the eye and say, what you won't get is saying we lied to you, when you left here. That's in the process to get you here. That's in the process to keep you here. So we just believe, the more honest and upfront everybody can be, the better it is, because there's been plenty of situations where there's been kids, we have really, really good relationships with, but it's just not the right fit. They're not the fit for us. We're not a fit for them. It's completely fine. There's way too many schools and way too many players to recruit for either side to ever settle.
I agree. Hey, man, I want to ask you a question, because this is going to change D1 just a tad, because it's going to be pros and cons to it. Starting next year, they're going to allow you guys to do stackables. And I think that's going to be wild. You already have a budget, like for, 13 fools. That's already in the budget. Will that change anything per se, the way you go about some kids where they might have been questionable, but because you guys are going to go up to 15 next year, 15 fools, yes, right? So you're going to go up to 15 fools. Will that change anything per se when you got this kid that may be borderline per se, but let's go back to what we talked about earlier. Great character kid, high academic. He can get into the Tennessee Tech. Maybe he got a 4.3. So that lets us know he's probably taking some AP classes. Would that be attractive to you guys then in those situations?
It could be. I think there's definitely a situation where kids who obviously you've got 2 additional scholarships, but it eliminates, the walk-on, right? So whereas you may have had, 3, 4, 5 kids who could kind of fit that walk-on profile, you got to shrink that a bit. But there's gift and a curse, right? You lose some opportunities for the volume of kids you may have been able to bring in, but I think that package may be a bit more attractive. Whereas, hey, maybe you're a year or 2 away from being ready, but instead of you having to come out of pocket, we as a school can kind of take care of it. So there's definitely a gift and a curse there for sure. In this first year where we're going to have to look back and say, okay, hey, we're adding 2 scholarships, I think that is going to force everybody to probably take a little bit of a different approach. So whereas, like I said, the volume of opportunities may shrink, I think the quality of the experience may step up a little bit.
Okay. I like that. I like that. And, as we're, winding this down a little bit, I always like to ask this from a recruiting, like if you walk into somebody's, living room and you're, they're high on your list, why Tennessee Tech?
What we feel like is we have everything that can help you reach whatever goals you want. From an academic standpoint, like I said, there's been studies and reports done where, especially for local Tennessee kids, but I would just say in the Southeast in general, the value of the education you can get, the quality of the education you can get, the advantage that sets you up when you leave here, just in terms of job opportunities, the amount of money you can make. We check all of those boxes. And so then you look at from an athletic standpoint, we've won championships. We've had guys go on and play professionally, whether it's in the NBA, whether it's overseas. Because of the technology now, we have contract with ESPN. Every single game we play is at least on ESPN Plus. The OVC has a deal with the ESPN. I mean, 2 years ago, we played 6 games on national TV and 3 of them were at home. So you've got a chance to get the exposure. So when you look at it athletically and academically, anything you want to do, you can achieve right here with us. So not to say we're necessarily better than any other program, but again, for the guys that we try to identify who think we're a fit, for the ones who are serious about getting a degree and trying to maximize their basketball career, there's no limitation that you have by coming to Tennessee Tech.
I like that. Hey, man, I appreciate you coming on tonight, to get the listeners to talk about, introduce them for the ones that aren't familiar with Tennessee Tech. You here in Atlanta all the time, so
Yes.
we know who you are here, but for the people, like you said, and even some of the people in Birmingham and Mississippi, South Carolina, North Carolina that aren't familiar with you, and some of the people in the Midwest and up north, I think this is a good thing to bring you on the show so people can say, oh, let me take a look at Tennessee Tech. And in winding this down, for people that want to reach out to you online, or if you answer Twitter, how can they contact you?
Twitter and Instagram is at @D_Steele22. I try to do my best to give back to people as much as I can. Like I said, we try to find really, really good players wherever we can. I'm super, super appreciative for you having me on. I'm a big fan of the work that you do, and we need more people like it. You're an invaluable resource on both ends for the recruits, for coaches like myself. So anything I can ever do on my end to help, I'm always willing to do it. But again, I appreciate you having me on, and any chance I can talk about Tennessee Tech. Like I said, we're Tennessee's kind of hidden gem, but we're working our way up to where we're gonna put Cookeville, Tennessee on the map. So we're super excited direction of our program and our university as a whole.
I got one question for you before I let you go. How bad did you hear it when Tennessee got Alabama the other week?
It was tough, it was tough, but we've got a growing pocket of Alabama fans here. My wife and son included. She did track at Alabama when we were there together, so she's the real athlete of the family.
Okay.
But I wear my Alabama stuff every Saturday, win or loss. Now the Tennessee people can talk now, but they had about 16 years they couldn't say anything.
Right.
So I was here. Thankfully, Saban was still the coach for a little bit, but trust me, I live in the fact that I know I'm in enemy territory, but I'm converting a couple slowly but surely. But one thing we all agree on, we're all Tennessee Tech fans, so that makes it most exciting.
Absolutely. Hey, man, once you come on this show, man, you consider it family, man. And, I know I'll see you at the independent events, at the shoe events. I'll see you all next summer. And I appreciate you coming on, man. This definitely won't be the last time you come on, okay?
Awesome. Thank you. Looking forward to it.
All right, man. You take care. You have a good one, okay?
Thank you. You too.
All right. Listen, that was Coach Steele, man. You know, I could have talked to him for hours, you know, because my family is originally from 45 minutes from University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa, in between Birmingham and Tuscaloosa. So with him, I was familiar with him in his playing days as well. But, you know, I can't stress enough what he said today, how important it is to take care of business off the court. You know, anybody that I bring on this podcast, you guys are going to understand. Listen, if you don't take care of business, one of two things is going to happen. You're not going to be around long. They're going to send you home, or you're going to be battling back and forth between being ineligible or eligible. And you better be an incredible player for them to have patience for that. Before I let everybody go, man, you know, Coach Steele brought it up, and I was saving it for now. You know, I want to send my condolences to, you know, Amir Abdur-Rahim's family, Sharif, his brothers, you know, that whole family. You know, Amir was an incredible guy, incredible. And, you know, man, just never take life for granted, man. At 43, you just never know when your time is being called. But the mark he left on college basketball as well as in life, if you just scroll through, I mean, there's countless posts of the type of the person Amir was, and it's consistent all the way around the type of person he was. And I was blessed and thankful to, you know, I was there when he was at Kennesaw State when they were 1-27, but I also was there when they were winning at Kennesaw State. I was there at South Florida when they clinched last February against Wichita State. So I was a great supporter of him, and you know, he was always the same thing the whole time. And you know, one of his main sayings, I'm gonna leave it tonight. You know, it's two things he used to say that I used to love. He'd say all the time when people would get all riled up, Amir would be like, "Relax, relax." You know, let it take care of itself, relax. And then the other thing is keep the main thing the main thing. You'll see a number of people say that because those were two of his big sayings as well. We're getting close to 106 episodes, well, 5 episodes now away from being 100. I know we should have been there, but man, I've been all over the place from August till now. So we're honing in on the season, but we're gonna have a show every week now. Between it's either gonna be Sundays, Mondays, or Tuesday, depending on how, you know, my media coverage schedule goes. But we're gonna get back to doing this every week. And thank you guys for tuning in as normal. And we'll see you next week as usual with another good guest. You all have a good night. I'm David Jones.